He is known to the world as one of the best drummers and percussionists in music history, Mr. Stewart Copeland of the Police. And Stewart, how are we doing today, my friend?
Very good. Thank you very much.
And I know, Stewart, you were born in Virginia, but I know shortly after that your family moved to the Middle East. And how did that journey impact your musical influences when you were growing up?
Well, I got all kinds of cool Arabic stuff in the mix
Yes.
that I wouldn't have gotten growing up in Scranton, Ohio.
Very, very good point, Stewart. Very good point. And
Well, it's pretty exotic over there, or at least was when I was growing up. It's all homogenized now. If I had grown up in Egypt or Lebanon today, I'd probably would be right up to date with all the cool stuff coming out of America. But as an American, a hungry, an American kid who had never been to America after leaving when I was 2 months old, hungering for American culture on the Voice of America radio, like 1 or 2 hours a week of pop music. Mostly what I got around me was Arabic stuff.
that totally makes sense on the way that you structure your drum playing. I play drums myself, and I've always looked up to you as a drummer and as a musician personally. And speaking of playing the drums, you started playing when you were around 12 years of age when your family resided in Lebanon, correct?
Well, yes, there was the American Beach Club there. There was a British Embassy Beach Club as well. The different communities there had their own kind of hangouts. They would throw parties for the teenage kids at the American Community School there, and I was in the Black Knights. We played Animals and Kinks songs.
Very, very cool. Very cool.
We rocked, even back then.
And Stewart, how did you meet with the other guys that would form the Police?
Well, I had been living in England all this time, going to boarding school there. My folks moved from the Middle East to London when my dad's CIA cover was blown. He shipped his family off, and I ended up in boarding school in England. So I had kind of roots in London, and I was just about to finish off college when I got a call to go back to London and join a band called Curved Air. And on tour with Curved Air, I went to Newcastle, and I saw Sting playing in a place there, and I've told the story so many times I forget.
How did you come up, Stewart, with the band's first single, Fallout? Because you wrote a lot of the early band's material, correct?
Well, yeah, I had to bamboozle Sting into coming down from Newcastle to London. I told him I had a band. Yeah, we're cool. We got a name. We're called the Police. And I had to scratch up a guitarist real quick. And sure, we got material. Yeah, I got a lot of songs. Yeah, I got great songs, hits, all of them. And he believed that. Came down, and it took him a little while to figure it out because he was into jazz at the time. Mm-hmm. But when he was down there and he figured out the 3-chord trick and he started writing songs, that's when cool stuff started to happen.
And how did you guys come up with Roxanne?
Sting was at a hotel, lonely at a hotel in Paris, and I guess he looked out the window and saw the women of the night who were calling to him, and he was inspired to write a song.
In October of 1979, the band's second album, Regatta de Blanc, was that one of your personal favorite albums in the Police music catalog? I've read that a few times.
Yes, that is my favorite of the Police albums.
And I always loved the track, Stewart, that you wrote for that album, On Any Other Day. What was the inspiration behind that tune for you?
Well, actually, I was scratching around for a lyric, and I just put in doggerel there to fill the space. And then I wrote a serious song, which I thought was real cool, but Andy and Sting thought it was dumb. So we went back to the original doggerel lyric, which actually seemed to make more sense. It had some heartfelt thing about something meaningful. I forget what. I think they were right. It was probably dumb as soon as you shed any light on it.
Too funny. And I know between those studio albums, you did do some solo material yourself under the name Clark Kent?
Well, I'm still denying it to this day, but I'll take all the glory.
I love it, Stewart. I love interviews like this. It's just great. The band's album, Zenata Mondada, was kind of rushed due to the fact that you guys were heading out on another world tour, and is that correct?
Hang on just a minute. I'm going to switch phones.
Okay.
Hey.
Yes, sir.
So, you want to ask me that again?
Yeah, sure. The band's album, Zenata Mondada, was that rushed due to the fact that you guys had to go out on another world tour, and you guys only had a selected amount of time to get in the recording studio and do that?
Well, no, it wasn't rushed, really. It was kind of in the time frame that we usually allowed ourselves. There was just a lot more pressure on it. It had to be a hit.
Right.
The first couple, the first one we made, which was never expecting anything to happen, screw you, world, we're doing this. And then the second one, which is why it was such a great album, in my opinion, was because we were all flushed with the success, full of confidence, and nothing to lose. Mm-hmm. So we slammed through the album. We made half of it up on the spot. And then the third album, we'd had a couple of hits now, and people are kind of counting on the big one. Come on, boys, you can take it over the top now. And so there was a lot more pressure on the third album. Suddenly we had a stake in it. Suddenly we had something to lose. There was the golden ring was flashing before our eyes, and all we had to do was but to grasp it. So there was a lot more pressure on that album. But in terms of time, we were very quick.
Okay.
And we did the first two very quickly, and we actually did the third one pretty quickly, too.
And the track that was on that album, Bombs Away, was there some hidden meaning behind that track?
Well, it's about the consciousness of the third world, and it's so far away from America, so far away from our headlines, but all kinds of wacky stuff happens out there in the big bad world, and that's what that song was about.
Did you guys go to the Caribbean to record Ghost in the Machine as inspiration for that album?
No, the inspiration happened before we got there.
Okay.
It was a very inspiring place to record because it was so far away from everything. But no, I think all the material was conceived before we got there, as far as thematic material, lyrics and such.
Right, and you guys would be, writing when you guys are on tour for the album before that. So, I totally get that. I love the drum track that you did, Stewart, on "Rehumanize Yourself."
Oh yeah, a forgotten track.
It's one of my favorites from Ghost in the Machine. How did that track come about?
I can't even remember that. Rehumanize. That was a track that I recorded. We all wrote songs furiously in the time allotted for doing that. Mm-hmm. Even though we knew that Sting would come up with the hits, but we wrote for two reasons. One, because we thought our own stuff was really, really great, and the other is because we had kind of responsibility so that Stingo wouldn't feel like he was the only guy working. Mm-hmm. So when he went off back to write songs, we went off back to write songs. We all manfully tried to come up with the best we could come up with, and then we'd get to the studio and we'd hear his 10 songs, all of which were fantastic, and our own meager efforts, it's pretty tough to compete. But, Andy and I did come up with a couple things.
After the Ghost in the Machine World Tour, you guys kind of sort of went in your own directions musically. And how were you approached to do the film score? I know you've done a ton of film scores, but for the movie Rumblefish.
A call came in from Francis Ford Coppola, so I took the call, and he invited me down to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where they were rehearsing to shoot a movie. I'd never heard of the movie because they hadn't made it yet. Mm-hmm. And in the cast were all these kids I'd never heard of, but who were deemed to be future stars. And since then, all of them, the entire cast, each one of them has won an Academy Award for something.
Wow.
Matt Dillon, Diane Lane, Larry Fishburne, Mickey O'Rourke, who else have I left out there? Dennis Hopper. Everybody went on to really do great stuff. Anyhow, how did that happen? Francis called, invited me down to Tulsa, talk about music, high concept. The clock is ticking, high noon. Time, clicking talk. Well, that's all about rhythm, my thing. Okay, so I concocted some tapes. So, I went down to a studio right there in Tulsa and made some loops, kind of rhythm loops for him to get his head around the rhythm, and he kind of fastened onto that and appointed me composer, which felt very dignified. And so there I was. I had to figure out how you score a movie, and the fact that I had no idea was kind of what worked, because I had to invent the wheel from scratch, which meant that for Francis, it was all a new approach. And it's pretty interesting, very cool, in fact, that in art, you can not what you're doing and just make that up. And it's called revolutionary.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the wonderful thing about art and the wonderful thing about music, because everybody has their own influences, their own tastes, their own ears that, listen to music differently.
Yeah. Don't try this with engineering.
Too funny, man. And from the studio album Synchronicity, the haunting song Every Breath You Take, I've heard from different sources. Is that really about a stalker?
Why, yes, it is.
Please explain.
Well, it's the author taking a dark point of view, imagining that he is a stalker, obsessed with another person, following their every move, and that's something that Stingo liked to do, to explore the dark recesses of the mind.
You've written a lot of material for film scores and composing movie soundtracks, and which one of them do you really hold dear to your heart?
Which track?
Well, which movie soundtrack, or what experience doing film scores?
Let's see, there's so many, oh my goodness. Some of my favorite scores were dud films. Rapa Nui, I really enjoyed that score. Mm-hmm. Film, I thought it was a really cool film, but it kind of sank without a trace. Another film, She's All That, I did that in a heartbeat while bouncing on my pogo stick, and that was a huge hit. So go figure.
Tell me about the track "Don't Box Me In" that you collaborated with Stan Ridgway from the band Wall of Voodoo. How did that all come about?
Well, we needed a main title song. Who do I know who can sing a bit? Well, I always liked that Wall of Voodoo guy, so I called him up. He came on down. We wrote a song that day, and he was on tour at the time, so he had a dawn flight the next morning. But we spent all day cranking up this track and mixed it that night. He got on a plane and disappeared. Anyhow, finished the score, and we were just finished the main title, and he calls up and says, "Stewart, man, I'm out here on the road, and I've been listening to this mix, man. I just that lyric, it's just a new So I said, okay, I'll send you the multi-track, the 2-inch multi-track, and there's a couple of tracks free. You can put a new vocal on there with your new lyric. Cool. Big mistake." So he gets the multi-track and re-sings the song with a new song, which sucked. And he sang the song over all the old vocal tracks. So now I can't mix the track because the master vocal is gone. Replaced, I think it was called a hit in the face, I think, or smash in the face. It just, oh my God, it was so cool, and now it's not. So the mix that went on the record and is the mix that exists unto this day is that 4 o'clock in the morning mix, the day of the recording. So it has sort of a freshness to it, that mix. But it was like our ears, we'd spent all day working on this thing. Our ears were shot. We just said, okay, print it. And that's the mix.
Okay, cool. And then in 1985, Stewart, you released your solo album, The Rhythmastic. And tell me about that experience for you personally doing your own solo album back then.
Can I hear that just one more time?
I know, I pronounced it wrong, didn't I?
Oh, please, one more time.
Rhythmastic?
Rhythmastic, that's not bad.
You know what, Stewart? We'll just laugh about it. Just you can just
one more time, please. One more crack. Take a run at it this time.
That's all I got, Stewart. That's all I got, buddy.
The rhythmatist.
Okay.
Okay, after me. The rhythmatist.
The rhythmatist.
Okay, now try spelling it. Good luck.
Oh, Stewart.
Okay, what would you like to know?
Just tell me about your experience doing that great solo album.
Oh, it was a cool experience. I went over to Africa. We were going to shoot a documentary on. I wanted to shoot a documentary. The director wanted to shoot a feature movie. He was this guy who spent his entire life out on his hands and knees in the triple canopy jungle, climbing up rivers, and he'd been bitten by tarantulas, tsetse flies, had dengue fever, Bafuta swan fever. The guy wanted to shoot a hit movie, and he had himself a rock star, and he wanted to make a movie that would get him into Hollywood. And I wanted to go up the Limpopo River and make a really cool documentary about the deeper music of Africa, the roots of our own sound. Where does American music come from? And so we were kind of at cross purposes. But we were there, and we shot everything in sight. And we were arguing about what kind of movie we were making the whole way across Africa. But we had all these cool adventures, and we had the camera running and shot some very cool stuff. And the music was, I was very proud of the music. It was kind of a mix of all this stuff that I recorded out in the field in Africa. And then I took it home and messed around with it in my studio. The film, I've come to enjoy it 20 years later. The dumbness has sort of become quaint. And one day I'll get over it. So maybe I'll have to, 20 years after I'm dying, I'll release the movie or something.
Stewart, back here in the States, in 1986, you teamed up with Adam Ant to record the title track and video for the Anthony Michael Hall movie Out of Bounds. How did you get together with Adam to put Out of Bounds together?
Once again, they needed a main title for the movie. Who do I know who can sing a bit? Let's call up Adam. And he was in that perfect place where he hadn't been active for a while and was eager to do something. So he came over and did a really cool track.
Tell me, Stewart, I know you wrote a book a few years ago, your memoir, Strange Thing Happened. Tell me about that.
Well, I've been writing these stories as I have adventures doing cool stuff. And I would write these articles and file them away. And I'd originally intended to, have magazines maybe publish them as just individual stories, kind of dinner tales, stories to be told at dinner, to regale people with my travels in Africa, my adventures in polo, my adventures with orchestras and so on around the world. And I was persuaded to put them all in a book, which I did. all these terrific stories. And, of course, writing a book about my life, one of the aspects of it of interest to most people was perhaps maybe the rock band I was in, The Police. But I figured I had already done a movie about the Police. Sting and Andy had both written excellent books about the Police, and I figured the part I didn't need to cover was the Police part. Mm-hmm. So I did cover the end of the last Police part, which was the reunion tour. Had a whole big, like a third of the book was about the reunion tour. Mm-hmm. In spite of its extremely high literary merit, people howled, "Where's the Police story?" And so my bitter regret is that I didn't tell once more the Police story in that book. But all the other stories are really cool.
Very, very cool. And
including the Police reunion part, which is was kind of fresher and hasn't been told before and was a wild ride. Because, in fact, what the Police reunion tour was, for me, was a suburban dad with a vaguely arty job scoring movies gets plucked from this suburbia and thrust into a ginormous stadium rock band, legacy rock band, once more in tight pants in front of 80,000 people. And I had to remember all those chops about being the product, because as a film composer, you are not yourself the product.
Right.
Your name is hardly even on the poster. Mm-hmm. And so it's easy to slip back into suburbia and, driving my kids to school and wearing comfy clothes and everything. Suddenly, I had to be in a rock band again. And that was kind of an interesting experience.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I would love to read the book. And what was that experience like for you, Stewart? I mean, exactly how you said, you're working on film scores, working in your studio, working on your own time, your own pace, and then being thrust into that spotlight once again. What was that like personally for you, though?
It was exhilarating. It was high pressure. I had been an independent operator for 20 years, and to be back in the machine as a cog in the machine, mm-hmm. Was uncomfortable because the Police, it turns out, I'd had all the years in my mind. My memory of the Police was my little band that did well. But when it was reunited, it's not my little band anymore. It's not our band anymore. It was this behemoth, and we were just kind of three of the major components of a giant edifice. And so it was very much like joining the Army. And it was real exciting to walk out on that big stage, to be the center of all that attention, to have this giant crew around us. We had, unlike in the old days, we played the same stadiums back in the day, but we had a crew of 3. And now, with the reunion tour, there was like one guy on the tour, his job was dressing room ambiance coordinator. And his gig was every place we'd show up, he'd take the dressing rooms, which were for a football team, and turn it into an ambient, cool hang, with drapes on the walls. We call it pipe and drape. They put up these kind of frames around the room. These are cement cinder block rooms for a team,
right.
And they put up like silk drapes and mood lighting and objets d'art and comfy sofas and everything like that, and basically dress it up like a boudoir, all for me to hang in before the show. And each one of us had our own little suite there, which was weird because we always used to have a dressing room with drinks in it, and that's it, And so the whole style of the tour was a new thing, but more like pampered poodles in the middle of this huge dog show.
I love the analogy, Stewart. I love the analogy. That's great. And it was so funny, Stewart. I was watching A&E the other night, and I saw the episode that you did on Storage Wars, where you were appraising that drum set. And I mean, would acting be something you would look into in the future?
Well, I've tried it. I'm crap at acting, unfortunately.
Okay.
One needs a humility and a selflessness to be a good actor, which I haven't been able to master. A little more zen for me, I guess, but the acting thing doesn't really work. But the Storage Wars, oh my God, I'd never even heard of the show before. Mm-hmm. And I come over and I had a fun time with that guy who was a blast. What a great guy. We had just an afternoon of laughs. They only had, it's only a small show, so they only were able to use a bit of it. We just howled all afternoon. We had a great time. And but I never realized how huge that show was. If I do Letterman or something like that, for the next week there's kind of a glow, and I can feel the visibility rising a little. After this show, I couldn't get through an airport. Hey, you're that guy, Amazing. That show's huge.
Oh yeah. And it's not like Letterman that gets played once. I mean, that Storage Wars episode will be played forever.
Yeah.
And Stewart, tell me about all the new exciting stuff that you're currently working on.
Well, I kind of have two strings going. One is this orchestra stuff that I enjoy doing. I'm writing a concerto for percussion for an orchestra in England for their percussion section to make them shine. They get to walk to the front of the orchestra, like a 15-minute piece for a big-ass orchestra, and the three guys get to hammer it up in the front. When they're done with it, I might take it out myself, and it'll join my repertoire of cool stuff that I can play with an orchestra. And I'm working on Ben-Hur as well, which is the 1925 black and white movie. Long story. I'm writing lots of orchestral music. Never mind all that. I'm also just starting an opera. This is all for 2014. This stuff is very long lead time. So that's what I do by day. That's my day job. Mr. Sears, composer dude, writing for orchestra. Love it. By night, I rock. And I've got behind me, I write this music on the computer, but behind me is a row of big-ass amplifiers and a Fender Stratocaster, and I got me a double B-flat tuba, I got trombone, I got alto trombone, I got F-sharp trombone, I got trumpet, I got all kinds of cool stuff here which I like to play, and I get my buddies over here to the Sacred Grove. And I tell them, but they quickly forget, that every square foot of the studio is close mic'd, line checked, and routed. And all I do is hit record. As soon as they walk in the door, I hit record on my machine. And I got 6 cameras rolling, and the hard drives are burning. And my buddies come over here, and we jam and have a wild party. And they leave. And then I look at the tapes, which I've got multi-track of everything that happened in the room, and I cut up these cool jams into tracks with video. And I post these videos on Stewart Copeland Net on YouTube.
Very cool, and I'm sure the response from that is just incredible.
Well, they do go down pretty well, but I'm kind of under the radar. I'm not on a network channel or anything like that. I'm just kind of just putting them up for the hell of it. Pretty soon I'll get. I've got about 15 of them now, and I've just hitting critical mass where I think I might go and get me a YouTube channel.
Yeah, I'm thinking of doing the same thing, Stuart. I've been in radio for about 15 years and just done a lot of great interviews like the one I've done with you today. And, it's always cool just to, throw it out there and just see what the response is. I mean, it doesn't have to be viewed by billions and billions of people. It's just, if you have that one connection with that one fan, I mean, that says it all.
Yeah, it is a buzz. I've just in the last 3 months, I've started up on Facebook and Twitter. And I was afraid to get on Twitter because who knows what I might say. But since I've got on there, it's really a lot of fun, actually, because it's instant response. I drop a cool picture on Facebook, and just instantly thousands of people have seen it. They're responding to it. It's like, I'm alive, I'm in touch, the world is there, and I can touch it with my finger. With my alphanumeric keyboard, I can drop something, and it is heard. It's a really cool thing.
Yeah, it's cool. It's so funny how, even 10 years ago, what technology has done in just the last 10 years, it's pretty incredible. For more information on Stewart, please go to stewartcopeland.net. Mr. Stewart Copeland of the Police, thank you so very much. Really appreciate it, my friend.
Oh, I hope you got a story.